Have you ever felt that you were hanging at the end of a rope and then the rope broke and then you were falling into a dark black hole? The Bible says in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 33 verse 27 that underneath are the everlasting arms. Underneath your fall are God's arms right now. Welcome to our final program. This is part 3 of a 3-part series called Finding Hope in the Midst of Depression and Despair. My guest has been and still is Christy Christopher. She's a nurse in Dallas. She's also a medical assistant for Dr. Neil Nedley for his world-famous Recovering from Anxiety and Depression program at Weimar, California, in Northern California. So Christy, here we are. We're back again.
Hello.
Hello, hello. It's been a good day.
Yes.
We've already done 2 programs, and this is number 3.
That's right.
And I want to start out by going back to the verse that I just read a little bit ago from Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 27. The eternal God is your refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms.
Amen.
And then the rest of the verse, or the next part, says, and he shall thrust out the enemy from before you. And I think we can both relate to this. I know we can, that in your battle with depression and temptations, suicidal temptations and medications, which I've dealt with the same things, I think it's safe to say that we've both found that the key to getting through these trials and this darkness was a supernatural help.
Absolutely.
That the Lord is the one that has brought us through.
No doubt.
I know that in my life for sure. And
Absolutely. Same.
do you feel like your struggles have brought you closer to God?
I do. It shows that in those depths of despair, in those pits that I felt I was in, He was in there with me. And He not only brought me out, much like He did for you, but established on something as a firm foundation to keep going back to and to keep trusting, knowing that He has always been there. He never left.
That's right.
He's been there the whole entire time.
Yeah, isn't that, like you've heard the story, the classic story. I've seen it on a poster on walls, and my daughter gave me a little poster that I put on the wall in my bedroom about the 2 sets of footprints.
Oh, right.
Where there's 2 steps or 2 sets of footprints on the sand by the water. And someone describes how he goes through all these trials and then he looked back and there was only 1 set of footprints.
Right.
So he prayed and he said, "Dear God, I thought you said you'd never leave me. How come I was walking alone?"
Right.
During those really dark times. And then the end of the little saying is God speaking, and He says, "My child, there was only 1 set of footprints because those were mine, and I was carrying you."
Oh, it's profound.
And know that's a very famous paragraph that's really touched a lot of people. And I can really relate to that I don't think I would have made it through those, getting off the lorazepam and going through 2 weeks of withdrawals and feeling just a sense of darkness and hopelessness and no light at the end of the tunnel, and yet just clinging. I felt like my rope had broken and I was falling, and I just said, "Lord, I'm going to trust in you no matter what." And I know that it was God that brought me through. Do you think most of the people that you work with at Dr. Nedley's program, do you attribute their recovery as you watch people's recovery? I mean, I know that hydrotherapy, which they teach at the Nedley program, is very important. Water treatments, hot and cold showers, and nutrition and exercise and all these other things. But where does prayer come into this, and where does God come into this, and how much of a component is the supernatural ability of the Lord to help us through these times of trial?
It's only by His power, I believe, that any of us have any strength to overcome anything like this. I know I could have never done it on my own. I had to call out to Him and take His strength and just lean into what He could do. and look away from self or what I thought I could do on my own, because that's when I would fail. And so basically just taking on that surrender was where that came to place for my life. And it seems almost like that doesn't make sense, like it's counterintuitive to surrender, then you get strength. But that's what it was and what I had to do. I've seen other participants have the same, because it seems to be a struggle with trying to figure everything out and trying to take things on and, trying to achieve health and healing on one's own. And most of the people that try that end up in the program, so I know that doesn't work. So, it didn't work for me anyway. So
why do you think it's so hard for people to surrender and trust God that He can bring us through whatever we go through?
I can't speak for everyone else, but for me, it just was it had probably part of it to do with pride, thinking that I could figure it out professionally and, working in healthcare, and then realizing that I couldn't. And so I can't speak for everyone else, but it seems to be that willingness to accept help from people that may know more or have more expertise in a certain area, and trusting what they have, that God's given them a certain area that they're good at. And so to let them kind of teach what would work best. So
right. There does come a time when we need, like there's a Bible verse that says, in the multitude of counselors there is safety.
Yes.
And there comes a time when we need to, stop relying on ourselves, rely on God and on the people that He sends to us.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I know that's what happened with Dr. Nedley. I mean, God brought me to Weimar so I could learn from this man, and I could go through the program, and I could have the support of different people like Nathan Hyde. Nathan and I really connected, and he was just there for me. I can't tell you how many times we took walks together, and he was just, there as a sympathetic friend. And the thing about Nathan is that he was always encouraging me.
Nice.
I mean, he's like the incorrigible enthusiast. There's just nothing that phases him. And every time I would describe something, I just had this, I had a terrible night, or this just happened, and I'm thinking all these thoughts, he'd say, you'll get through this. Don't worry, you'll be fine. You will get through this. He just kept telling me that. And it encouraged me.
That's awesome.
And we just, we need encouragement. And I don't know, I think pride, like you said, is one of the big reasons. I think another reason why it's hard to surrender is because we know intuitively that there's things we have to give up.
No, it's true.
If we're going to really make a surrender of our lives to God, then this bad habit, this bad habit, we can't continue to, hold on to those things and walk with God at the same time.
Yeah, people want to hear good news about their bad habits.
Yeah. And there is good news. And the good news is that we don't have to hold on to our bad habits.
Yes.
So we can get the victory over our bad habits, and that God loves us in spite of our bad habits.
Yes,
those are all good things. Yeah. Why don't you share with us some of the stories? Now that you went to Weimar originally as an attendee, as a participant, as someone that needed to get out from underneath drugs and depression and all the things that you went through, and now that the Lord has brought you through all this, He's brought you back, and Dr. Nedley has brought you onto His team, and now He's using you to help others. Does He do this with a lot of people that come through His program?
He's done it with a few that are willing to stick with the program. There's kind of a trial period. You have to get through the 20 weeks and make it to the other side, so to speak, and then be consistent. But He's done that with a couple others. Namely, there's one nurse that works for him that really struggled with an opiate addiction, and she was on, I think, a $2,000 a day habit, or maybe it was weekly. I could be overshooting, but she actually now works in his clinic, and she had a miraculous turnaround. She came through one of the programs I was the nurse for, and her transformation was like night and day. And then to see her happy and healthy and free of all these addictions and serving God, and now she's a big prayer warrior. She's really into the Word and encouragement and a lighthouse to a lot of other people. And it's been such a blessing to see her improvement, to see where she's at. So it's been really nice to see. That's just one of thousands.
Yeah, give her a fictitious name. Just pick a name.
We'll call her Susan.
Okay, Susan. So does she now still work with Dr. Nedley?
She does.
She does?
She does. And she loves the program just like, I do and the other staff do. And she's a great encouragement to a lot of other participants. And she is allowed to tell her testimony. And it's very pertinent with this day and age with the opiate epidemic that's been happening in our country to basically shed light on that topic and to bring other people away from that habit. So she's been a very strong leader. So it's been nice to see.
What can you just tell us any more details about her? Did she, from what you know, did she grow up in a Christian home, or did she go through her teenage wandering years like you?
She was more of a wanderer. Like we have some similarities, definitely in our stories, but different backgrounds, a little bit with childhood. I don't believe she grew up in quite as Christian of a home, so there was some discord in her family. So she grew up with a little bit of a more difficult childhood, but she was still like she left the faith for a while, and then now she is back. So a little bit different, but some of the similar struggles with addictions. So
And she went through the whole program as well.
She did, yeah. And she did really well. She continues to do really well. So.
Were you there when she was going through it? You were?
Yeah.
So you saw the whole transformation?
I did. Yeah, from start to finish. She didn't ask for a lot of things. She kind of flew under the radar. And then as time went on, as time goes on, you can kind of see where people are at, whether or not they show you. You can just tell with behaviors and things. And she made a pretty big turnaround because at first she wasn't as engaged, and then she got more into things and was willing to surrender more and more. And like you said, it's giving up that you get more back and you get more healing when you're willing to surrender those bad things, because God will replace those things, at least I've seen, with something better. And so you have to replace the bad habits with something good to keep it lasting. So
yeah, you can't just take away the bad, and if you don't replace it, then
right.
You have nothing to keep you going.
Right, to fill that time.
Can you think of any other stories? Okay,
yeah.
let's.
We'll call him Paul.
Okay.
To protect him. But he was, at least coming through the program, a house supervisor in a hospital setting, and had a very strong anger problem. And so almost lost his job over getting into basically a face-to-face, I don't want to say combat, but like an argument with a physician. And in his position, that wasn't a very wise move. So he almost lost his job. He came through the program. He had a pretty tumultuous marriage, had strained relationship with his kids, angry, would throw things, just, kind of volatile. Walked with him around the track, and we really connected that we had similarities with addictions as well. So we were able to commiserate there. He also is a nurse. And now he's getting promotions. His anger problem has very much lessened. I think he got remarried to his wife, like they renewed their vows, and has a really good relationship with his family. And so a lot of these issues really center on relationships, is what I've kind of seen. And when those are built, a lot of other things fall into place. The first one being your relationship with God, and then everything else. Seek you first the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. And then all the other things fall into place. So he had a miraculous turnaround. He's come back for EQ summits, and
what's an E? Most people don't know, what is an EQ summit?
Emotional intelligence summit that Dr. Nedley has every year at Weimar. And so he'll bring in guest speakers and testimonies and professionals to come speak on pertinent topics, mostly evidence-based. And so it's just kind of like a big seminar to try to learn and get CEUs and continued education and things like that.
And isn't an emotional intelligence summit, isn't the basic idea behind that is that we shouldn't be governed by our emotions, we shouldn't be governed by our feelings.
Yes.
We should be governed by our thinking, and the thinking needs to be true thinking.
Right.
That's based on evidence and especially based on the Bible.
Right.
So if we can retrain our minds,
Right.
not to think we're lost just because we feel discouraged or we
Right.
feel bad or we don't have a
Right.
good day, and we wake up and we wake up on the wrong side of the bed and we think, oh, maybe I'm lost today.
Yeah.
And
right.
so instead of being blown back and forth by our feelings,
Right.
we kind of put a check on those and we say this does not make sense.
Right.
I'm going to follow the truth.
Yeah.
The truth is based on the book,
Right.
based on the word. Yeah, that really helped me a lot.
Me too.
As you know, part of the program at Weimar is called CBT.
Yes.
Explain that a little bit.
So CBT, it's the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy. That's what CBT stands for.
Okay.
And it's the basis of crooked thinking versus straight thinking. So crooked thinking would be A to C. Like say you had an argument with your son, then that made you feel bad. So that's A to C. But in there, if you add a B, A to B to C thinking, that's a belief. And if you change that belief, then you can change the consequences. And so it has a lot more to do with what we're telling ourselves with our self-talk than even what's happening to us. Mm-hmm. So if you can change your self-talk and you can, what they call in the program, reframe, it has a lot to do with neuroplasticity, and the Lord made our brains plastic, and so it's more moldable. So you think of like a ski run, and you go under that same track over and over again, and it becomes well-worn, to where if you go down the ski ramp, you're going to go down into that pathway almost automatically. Well, if you want to think differently, you have to keep skiing down a new path, and that's fresh powder, and you have to keep going down that new path. It's not going to feel normal. It's going to feel like writing with your non-dominant hand. But eventually, one day, it's just going to click, and it's going to be harder to go back to the old negative pathway. So that's the beauty of the way God made us, is that we can pick a new, better way to think, and we never have to go back to that old way. And so that's the basis of EQ and CBT, and it can be learned. It's not inherited like IQ, and it's not something fixed. It's something that can be taught, which is really good news for a lot of people who are suffering.
So the neuroplasticity has to do with the neurons in the brain getting into the ski illustration. You get into a rut of thinking in a certain way over and over and over and over again, and those negative thoughts make you feel terrible. Right. And so you get into this, into this spiral. Right. And then if there's like you said, A to C, if there's the A is the actuating event, right? If there's an event around us that comes against us, we don't necessarily have to feel bad about it. It depends on how we think about it. Right. How we think about that event. If we think differently, and if we think in a different rut. Right. So we're starting to just basically think positive, that if you lose your job, it's not the end of the world. Right. Yes, it's not good, but I can get through this. Right. And so you just learn, and God can help me, and it's going to be okay. Right. God is with me. He can help me. He has other options. He has many, as a friend of mine once said, he said, I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed. And so I think, well, God has many tools in his shed. He's got all kinds of tools. And he can, if it's not this option, he's got this, and this. He's got all kinds of options. Yeah. So we need to learn to have faith and trust him and realize that he's got a lot of options. That's right. At his fingertips. And so we slowly learn how to trust and develop new patterns of thinking, which then help us to feel better. Exactly. So we're not so depressed or discouraged or down or whatever. Right. So. Any other stories before we get into some more of the practical resources for people that are watching, so that they can take away from this not just that it helped them, but how can it help me? Right. Understood. So any other stories? Yeah, there's one kind of recent that. We'll just call her Jane, came through the program, and she was very perfectionistic, and there's positive sides to perfection. I'm not saying anything about that. They're, usually perfectionists really are very well ordered and get things done, but very hard on themselves. Yeah, that sounds like me. Very hard on themselves. I'm pretty organized, but if I don't, I can be hard on myself. Yeah. If I don't perform to what I think I should be doing. Right. And so there's a lot of shoulds and musts, which become,
demands in our own minds, or it can become demands in a perfectionist mind, if that's something that resonates with you. At least these are things I've learned in the program. And Jane was very good. Like, she's a nurse practitioner, very on top of her game. You know, walking with her around the loop, I'm like, wow, she's very intelligent. And it was the EQ component that was missing for her. And so you can have a really high IQ but be miserable. And so that's not even what brings life satisfaction. And so walking and talking with her, she just was angry, mad at the world, was unhappy in her job. You know, her marriage was not the greatest in her mind. And so just her life just wasn't where she wanted it to be. And then I talked to Dr. Nedley, and he asked if I could be the nurse for a program, and I told him no. He said, well, we're going to get this person. And I'm like, what? And so she made a miraculous recovery, and now she works in the program, and she's doing wonderful. And so she's much happier. She's an excellent nurse. I mean, it's incredible to see her turn around.
So give us a little more information about the details of how does someone who's has a perfectionistic mind, you know, very high standards, and yet because the standards are so high, you're always condemning yourself. My marriage isn't perfect.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't perfect. This isn't perfect. And then you said she was angry.
Yeah.
And, you know, high achievers can tend to be very hard on themselves, and they make themselves miserable. So you said she got over that.
It seems that way.
And what were some of the secrets to how that happened?
That would be something you'd have to ask her, but from what I saw, it's really working the program. I mean, it's not the program that works, it's working the program. And so trusting that process and there's going to be times where you may not feel, like you mentioned, it's emotional reasoning, that just because we feel a certain way, we believe that's fact. Well, that's not, that's emotional reasoning. If you're, you know, super happy and you're going someplace you really want to go, does that make you an exceptional person? I mean, that's thinking of it in reverse. It's based on feelings. And so I think really getting to that point where you just, you know, she was just working the program, and she was diligent, being a perfectionist. And so she did the work, and so she got the result.
She did the work. Yeah, it reminds me of a scripture. I think it's in 2 Timothy 1:7. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, God has not given us the spirit of fear,
Amen. That's a good one.
but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Sound mind meaning, you know, sober thinking and thinking things that make sense, that are true, that are right. Like Philippians 4:8 is probably one of the main texts for that kind of thinking. Is it says whatever is true, whatever's lovely, whatever's noble and just and right and pure, think on these things. And then it says, and the God of peace will be with you. So if we learn how to think things that are true and right and honest and noble and just, then the result is we're going to emotionally, we're going to change, and we're going to feel better, and we're going to become just happier people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, let's talk about resources. Dr. Nedley's program, number one, is a big resource. So tell us how people can get in touch with Dr. Nedley or connect with Dr. Nedley or learn from him through the different ways that are available now. Because I believe God used that man, and I think you do too.
I do too.
God used Dr. Nedley to help me tremendously, and he's helped you. And God's plan is that, you know, he then used each one of us to help others.
That's right.
And as you know, when I was going through this, I had a counselor when I was at Weimar. Her name was Amanda, and that's her real name.
Yeah.
That's not a fictitious name, that's her real name.
She's great.
And I remember when I first met with Amanda, and she knew that I was, you know, that I'm involved in a television ministry, a radio ministry, and that we have a lot of influence with a lot of people, and that I write books, etc. And when she first had me as her counselee, I remember looking at her, and she was glowing. She was just glowing. She was so excited.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't understand. I mean, here I am, I'm depressed. I'm trying to get off lorazepam, and I'm, my brain is just fried, and I'm just discouraged. I'm not sleeping well. I got big bags under my eyes. I'm losing weight. I'm getting thinner, if that's possible.
Yeah.
And I remember she was so excited, and I looked at her, and I was just wondering, why are you so happy? And she said, I'm just looking at you and knowing what you do for a living, and I'm so excited about what God is going to do in your life.
Yay.
And then how he's going to use you to help other people who are struggling with some of the same things.
Yeah.
And when she first told me that, I just, I looked at her, and I thought to myself, what planet are you from? We are not connecting. I am feeling like I'm about to fall apart.
Yeah.
And you're excited that all of this is going to turn into a blessing for other people.
Right.
But sure enough,
She's right.
she was right. She was dead right. Maybe I shouldn't say dead right. She was alive right. And when I finally did get through this, and the cloud lifted, and it was really when I got off the supplements that Dr. Nedley was giving me kind of kicked in, and then the benefits of the exercise and the good diet, and then learning how to think positive thoughts, good thoughts. And then finally getting off that trazodone, which was my last medication that I was on. And when I finally got off of that and went through the little bit of withdrawals for that, it was just like the cloud just lifted off of me. It just lifted, and it's like my brain just snapped back. And cool. I started thinking clearly, and I started sleeping better, and just a whole host of things happened, and I started feeling back to normal again.
That's wonderful.
And finally, I decided to write a book on my story, which was Help for the Hopeless, this little pocket book that I'll tell you a little bit more about in a little while. Sharing just my story.
Yeah.
And as people read this book and heard me talk about this in different places, lo and behold, it was really encouraging them. It was a blessing to them.
Yeah.
So Amanda was right that God can use our trials and our struggles. And one thing they teach you at Weimar, as you know, there's a Bible verse that says that we should be thankful for everything. Be thankful for in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God for you in Christ.
Yeah.
Be thankful, give thanks in everything. And so I remember trying to figure that out and learn that. So if I'd go through a problem or I was still struggling, and I'd say, Lord, thank you for this depression. Thank you for this problem that I'm having. Thank you, thank you, thank you, because somehow you're going to use all this for good.
Amen. Yeah.
And he does. We don't understand it, but he does. And so, God's using Dr. Nedley to help people. I believe he's used me. He's using you.
He uses me,
and people that are watching this, he wants to use you too.
Right.
So tell them first how to connect with Dr. Nedley and what are the options available to get a hold of his resources.
So there's a couple different options. It just depends on what you think you can do reasonably. The 10-day is the best. It covers everything in terms of doctor's visits. It covers everything comprehensively. You're going to have a loving, caring staff that is with you every step of the way. If you're interested in that, to call, it's going to be through the office in Oklahoma. So it's 480-226-8007. That's the number for the clinic there. If you want to get in touch with Dr. Nedley and just do a phone consult, you can call his clinic, so there's that number as well. Or you can do the home-based program, and that one's not going to be as expensive. So you can get all the materials for a certain amount of money on nedleyhealthsolutions.com.
nedleyhealthsolutions.com.
Yes.
So the best option really is to go through the program like we did and actually get on a plane, fly to Sacramento, get picked up at the airport, be driven to the program, and go through that for 10 days.
Precisely.
But there is a cost to that, and some people may not be able to afford that.
Right.
So the next step, you said, is the community program or the home program?
It would be the community program. That's another option. That's the 8-week community program. Anyone can become a director. You can do the online training. And then you're basically qualified to take these programs to the community and run them for a small fee. It's a really good outreach. You some of the participants may not have the same outcome as the residential, but it's still evidence-based, and there's research on it on researchgate.com that shows people are still able to get off their benzos on an 8-week community program. So there's still a pretty big turnaround, and it's purely educational though, so there's no medication changes.
Okay, and how do people find out if there's a community program in their area or near them that they can go to?
I believe that's also on NedleyHealthSolutions.com. If you click on the community-based program link, it should have basically a map of all the places that's happening if it's registered.
And then if it's close by, they can drive there.
They can drive there. Yeah.
Okay, now what about the home-based program? I mean, these days in our current coronavirus crisis, most people are staying home.
Right.
And probably a lot of people are depressed over the coronavirus. I mean, their finances are hurting, and people are afraid of the future, and they don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And even if, when people are watching this, by the time you watch this, the coronavirus crisis is behind us, there will inevitably be some other crisis that's going to hit.
Right.
I mean, this is just life in this world. There's no way around it on this side of heaven.
Right.
So how do people get a hold of all of this inside their house?
It would be the same website, so it would be NedleyHealthSolutions.com, so they can go there, and there should be a link for the home-based program. But it's a lot of things in the program. You can do the blue light. That helps with circadian rhythm. There's more information about that online. Okay. And so there's other ways that it can be done, and it includes that book that you have there, Depression the Way Out.
So the home-based program it's based on the book that Dr. Nedley has written called Depression the Way Out. And this book is it's a gold mine of information, and it really it's got loaded with pictures and statistics and practical information about depression and stress and anxiety and how to get over these things and to live a happier life and to have faith in God who will help you to do this. So this book is part of the home program, and then isn't there a series of DVDs where they watch and then they go through?
Yes.
Isn't there they have a workbook? They have this book. They have a workbook.
Yeah, workbook goes with the DVDs, and then it also goes with the book, and then also that book that you have there, telling yourself the truth. That's a big component. This is basically CBT in a nutshell. So this book, I have this at home, and it's falling apart. I still refer to it. But basically, it tells you some of the misbeliefs, and it'll give you truths to counter that with. So you can talk back to those misbeliefs, which get us stuck sometimes as humans. So this is very good
like
resource.
A misbelief being, I'm hopeless, there's no way out of this, I'm trapped, and I'll be like this for the rest of my life.
Precisely.
That is a misbelief.
It's a misbelief.
That needs to be challenged with truth.
That's right.
And so that book teaches you how to do all that?
Yes. So you don't have to come up with your own if you don't have a counselor close by, or, it's just a really good resource just for life in general. So I'd highly recommend that one.
And you said that you've read that how many times?
Oh, it's to the point where it's falling apart, and it's highlighted and written in the sides, and the seams are coming loose. I don't know about how many times, but I refer to it even still.
So you like that book?
It's good, yeah. It's good.
And that book is part of the home program?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so they get the DVDs they can watch on their computer or on their DVD player.
Yeah.
And then they get the workbook that they go program by program, chapter by chapter, and then they get Dr. Nedley's depression book, which probably refers to different chapters to read.
It does.
And then they get Telling Yourself the Truth.
Yeah.
So, and then they learn about other things they can do, like their diet and the importance of exercise and a lot of practical things to help reboot the body and the mind.
Precisely.
And your attitude.
Yes. Yeah.
So your life changes.
That's right.
Yeah, I was wondering if, as I mentioned, for me, when I got off the trazodone, everything just finally kicked back into place. Was there a moment for you that maybe there wasn't, was it just a gradual thing where all of a sudden you just started feeling better, or did one day it really hit you, I'm really doing a lot better?
It was gradual, and I think it took other people that were close to me to point that out. Because in my own mind, I was like, oh, I'm the same. And then people around me are like, whoa, what happened to you? You're really different. And, I'm hearing things like, you're a very positive person. And I'm like, are we talking about the same person? And so it's just...
Turn around. Are you talking to me?
So, I mean, it's been good. So there hasn't been like a day like, oh, everything switched. But it's just doing these things daily. I mean, it's a lifelong program. This isn't just something that you do.
So it's not a
and
pill,
you're
it's not a
done.
potion,
No.
it's not just watching one program.
No.
It's learning how to live differently.
It's lifestyle.
Yeah, it's lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's doable.
And it's doable, and it's really
Something we can all do.
practical. It's not, rocket science. So that's the good news. But
Yeah, wow. Yeah, and for me, as I mentioned, when I got off the trazodone, finally the cloud completely lifted, but I really should mention that it was really a whole series of steps, to micro steps, that led to my healing. Most of my life, I've never been depressed. Most of my life, I haven't really had health problems. I've been very, very blessed, very fortunate. But in the summer of 2017, the bottom fell out, and I just tanked. And
Yeah.
I think, like I said before, the insomnia, not being able to sleep for some reason, really started this whole spiral, and then the medication really messed me up. And then Dr. Nedley helped me to get off the medication and put me on a different path. And when I was really in trouble, there was a time when I felt like my emotions were just gone. I had no emotions, and I couldn't cry. I was unable to cry. Because I hadn't been sleeping very well, during the day sometimes I was just exhausted. And I tried to take a nap, but I could not take a nap. My mind would not slow down enough. I'd lay on the couch and I would just, I couldn't sleep. Even though I was exhausted,
yeah.
couldn't sleep. And my appetite pretty much disappeared. So I was forcing myself to eat, and I'm already thin enough. And so I was losing weight. And I was, there was this cloud over my mind, and it was terrible. And I remember, step by step, like one day, I realized I was hungry. But hey, my appetite's coming back.
Yeah.
And that was big. And then another day, I laid down and I took a nap.
Oh,
and I
that's
thought,
wonderful. Yay.
something's happening.
Yeah.
I'm changing. I was able to take a nap.
That's great.
And then another day, I cried. I shed a tear. And so it's just like one by one, I'm going,
That's cool.
something's happening to me.
You're
My
coming
life
alive.
is coming. Yeah, I'm coming alive. And it gave me hope.
That's great.
Just those little tiny micro steps gave me
Yeah.
hope to keep going.
That's great.
And then finally, the last thing was the trazodone. When I got off that trazodone, after maybe, I don't remember, it was like a week or so, one day it was just like the cloud was gone. And I looked outside and I could see, the sky and the trees and
nice.
hear
Yeah.
the birds. And,
Right, that's
and I
true.
started feeling good. And the next day, actually, I was discouraged. But then I thought, I'm not going to let this get me because I'm making progress.
Nice.
And so then the next day after that, the cloud again was gone.
Yay.
And then I was free.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And so
Yay.
I can say, praise God.
Amen.
But it was a step-by-step thing. And all of these, telling yourself the truth and getting the exercise and getting on a good diet and learning how to think differently, all of these were very significant steps for me in getting out of my despair and my depression. Now let's see, what else do we have as far as resources? You gave me a business card, or I don't know if it's a business card, it's a ministry card.
Yeah.
Tell us about, it says Buried to Bless.
Buried to Bloom. Yeah.
Buried to Bloom.
Buried to Bloom.
Buried to Bloom. And this is your website, and this is your blog.
That's the blog.
So so just tell us about that, and we'll put this address on the screen so people can see it.
Okay.
And talk to us about that.
So a little bit about Buried to Bloom. It really was a God thing. It wasn't anything I really set out to do. But in telling the story of what he did in my life and working with Dr. Nedley, it just came to mind that there's people that could use different ways to think and different resources on how to do that. So what I do is there's this blog, and I write different reviews of books and things that are helpful, and put life experiences that I've had or I've had other people around me have that may resonate or be relatable, and put practical steps on how these different books can maybe apply to their lives. So it's been a blessing because then, I'm kind of able to dialogue with other people and hear their stories. And really the aim is to use this as a stepping point for other people to tell their testimonies. because I think testimonies are such a powerful thing and
Yeah,
a
wow.
witness for God. And so I
Right.
want to give people a platform to do that, because my story is not unique. There's a lot of people that have other stories either similar to mine or have stories that, maybe they have something in common with mine. And I just want this to become just a way for them to be able to share what God has done in their life.
So do you have other stories on your site?
That's the plan, not yet.
That's the plan.
Yeah,
Okay, so
that's
if
the
you're
plan.
if you're watching and if you've got a story, get a hold of Christy.
That's right.
And maybe your story will be on her blog.
Yes, please do.
Now tell us more. Buried to bloom. Why buried? Explain that.
With the depression, it was a feeling that I was buried. And so it was a very dark place. But God and his providence in Romans 8:28 is what I claim. He uses all to the glory of those who love the Lord, and he'll take something negative and make it into something positive. So that time in my life I felt buried, but I think
see.
he was planting me, and now I've bloomed.
I
and
see.
so I want to share that with other people.
I was thinking. I wasn't expecting you to say that. I was expecting you to say that, like Jesus talks about a seed, and he said, unless the seed of wheat is buried and dies, it stays alone. But when it dies, then it brings forth fruit. And that's the way it is when you plant a garden or plant a seed or anything that the seed gets buried, and it looks like you're getting rid of it. It's dying, but it really isn't. It's actually being put in the ground so that it can then give more fruit. And for us, we need to learn that there's a part of us that needs to die. We need to die to self. We need to die to our own ways.
Yes.
We naturally think that my way is the highway.
Right.
My way is the best way. And we really need to give that up and realize, Lord, I don't know how to live in a way that's good, or how to be happy, and how to do what you want me to do. I need to trust you and go into your way. So that's where we bury our old life, like baptism.
Yeah.
You bury the old life, and then you rise to a new life. And it's a paradox, because we think that we're losing everything. If we're going to do God's will in life, the feeling is it's too much to give up. I've got too much to give up. I'm not going to be happy. He's going to restrict my life. He's going to narrow my life. And it's not what I want.
Yeah.
But it's really the opposite.
Right.
That going our way is really the worst way. And surrendering to him and to do his will.
Right.
Then we do bloom.
Yeah.
And we're happy.
Right.
And we discover that on the other side of the surrender.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a real freedom in following God's will. And so he wants us to be free. We have free will, and so we're free to choose him. And he's a gentleman. He stands at the door and knocks, and he doesn't force his way in. So it's a beautiful freedom that he gives us.
So anything else on your blog you want to tell us about?
That's the main premise. It's still a work in progress.
Okay.
So it's there to bloom as well.
Good. Well, I'll have to check it out too. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? We do have the little pocket books that I've written as a result of going through my battles, and I guess I was buried too, and now by the grace of God, I'm blooming again.
Yay.
My family can see the improvement. When I was really depressed, my kids were just shocked. So was my wife, and I remember when I first started struggling with the insomnia, and I was not sleeping, and I felt like I was just getting weaker. I'd look at myself in the morning, and the bags were getting bigger, and I was getting thinner, and my negative thoughts were telling me, you're on the way down, and you're not going to get over this.
Yeah.
And so as I was talking to my kids, and Abby was, I think, 9 at that time, I told my family that you really need to pray for Dad, because if I don't get through this, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I've got to get over this. And then Abby looked at me and she said, Daddy, do you mean you might die? She said that. And I was just shocked, and I didn't know what to tell her. And I just looked at her and I just nodded my head. If I don't get through this, maybe this will happen to me. And she just broke down. It was one of the saddest moments of my life. My little girl just ran over to me and just hugged me and just started crying. She just cried and cried and cried, and she wouldn't stop crying. And I was holding her, and I just thought, oh God, this is terrible. What am I going to do? Please help me to get through this. And she just cried and cried and cried. And now she knows that, Daddy's doing good.
Amen.
And it's such a blessing to have my life back.
Amen.
And to feel like I'm doing something worthwhile.
Absolutely.
And that I'm here with you, and I'm
Likewise.
and you're sharing, and I'm sharing, and hopefully we want you to be blessed.
That's
And
right.
and then when you get through what you're going through, God can use you to help other people.
That's right.
And anyway, that's why I wrote these books, because God brought me through these. And the first one is Help for the Hopeless. It's just a little book, it's very inexpensive, and it's designed to encourage you that other people go through these things too, and that there is hope. There is help, and there is hope for the hopeless. So this little book is available, and then so is this little book called Secrets of Inner Peace. I've given out a lot of these books in airports when I travel, and I can't recall hardly anybody ever refusing this book.
Nice.
Because everybody needs peace.
Peace.
Yeah, one time I was in an airport, and I remember I was waiting to get on a plane, and we were delayed a little bit, and I looked across and I saw a little store there. It was an electronics store, and there was a man standing at the cash register by himself. There was nobody in his store. And I had one of these little books, and I just had this little thought inside my head, go give your book to that man. So I walked around, and I went into the store, and there was nobody there. And I walked up the cash register, and I said, hey, would you be interested in a little book? I wrote this book called Secrets of Inner Peace. And he looked at this beautiful cover. It's very peaceful and relaxing. And
Yeah.
he looked at that, he looked at me, and he said, I really need peace.
Wow.
He just said, this is exactly what I need.
That's awesome.
And I said, well, I think that somebody impressed me to come and give you this book.
Yes, amen.
And so anyway, this book is about the power of the promises. That's what it's about. The power of the promises. The promises of God can give people peace.
right.
Jesus said, peace be still. John 14:27, Jesus said, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. So there's so many promises, and a lot of times when I go to bed at night, or if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'm just thinking of the promises. There's a verse in Psalm 63 that says, when I remember you on my bed and meditate on you in the night seasons.
That's nice.
And then it says, I will praise you with joyful lips.
Oh,
For you have been my help. And under the shadow of your wings will I rejoice.
Yeah.
So these promises are so powerful, and they lift us up, above the discouragements of this life. And especially as we get closer to the final crisis, Earth's final crisis, we need these promises so we can go into the final battle, trusting God, being at peace, and knowing that He's going to be with us whatever happens. We all need that. So these are resources that are available. Let's see, what other resources do we have? Is there anything else, Christy, you can think of? Any books that you've read that have really been a blessing to you outside of Telling Yourself the Truth, or Dr. Nedley's book? Any books you've done a review on your blog?
There's one by Paul Conniff. I don't know if you're familiar with Paul Conniff.
I went to school with Paul at Weimar, believe it
Oh,
or not.
did you
No, actually,
really?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I didn't go to school there. I taught there. And he was a student. He was a college student.
Oh, how
When I was
interesting.
teaching there in I think it was 86 to 89.
Oh, that's
when
great.
I first met
Okay.
Paul Conniff.
He's a wonderful man. He has a book called The Hidden Half of the Gospel, and he talks about basically how you can equate Jesus' story in Isaiah 53 with something that you may be struggling with. And so you basically pick out how you can identify the way that Christ suffered for us and before us, and He entered into these human afflictions, basically. And so it's very profound. I'd recommend that one. It's very good because then it's very relatable, and there's different stories that he draws his own testimony from. So it's a very good book.
So it really goes into the life of Jesus.
Yeah.
and how he related to people.
Yes, because he was tempted to numb his pain with, they wanted to numb it with an alcohol type of thing, and so
When he was hanging on the
was
cross.
hanging on the cross, and how he suffered shame because he was naked on the cross. And so there's a lot of ways that Jesus knows what we're going through. He can identify with us. So it's pretty profound read. So I'd recommend that one.
Well, yeah, that's powerful. And I know that when I was going through my dark times, I remember really looking at the life of Jesus and seeing how he related to the leper. And the leper came to him and said, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." And then
Yeah.
Jesus reached out and touched him, it says, and he said, "I'm willing, be clean." And back then, if someone was a leper, I mean, a leprosy is a very contagious disease, and you don't touch lepers.
Right.
But Jesus did it. He wasn't concerned about that.
That's right.
And he touched him, and he healed him. And there's just so many scenes in the life of Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John where Jesus is ministering to people who are all mixed up. The prostitute,
Right.
the people that were demon-possessed, people that had all kinds of sicknesses, lepers, high and low, rich and poor. He loved them all.
That's right.
And he was trying to help them. And when we really get that picture that there is a God in heaven who made this whole world, who loves
Yes.
us so much, that when man sinned and went away from him, he did the unthinkable. He became a human.
Right.
And he veiled his glory
Yeah.
so that when he was walking around, he just looked like a regular man. But he was not just a regular man.
Right.
He's the maker of all life.
That's right.
Reaching out to his creation and trying to show them his love, that whatever the devil says, that God is mean, he's bad, he's harsh, he's angry, he hates you, you're hopeless, that all those are lies of the devil. And that the real God loves us more than we can possibly imagine.
That's right.
And that he's so committed to us that he was willing to become a human being, and then he was willing to give his life
That's right.
on a cross to pay the price for our sins, and then die, buried, and then bloom, and then rise from the dead.
That's right.
To give us hope.
That's right.
What a God we serve.
Amen.
And that's what really turns people's lives around.
That's right. Because it says something in Isaiah 53 that by his stripes we are healed. And there's something in Paul's book, he talks about that he's the wounded healer, and inside of Jesus is a gold mine of grace. And so to think of Jesus like that, it's a very peaceful picture, and to know what he did for us, and to know there's no one is too far gone. I mean, there's no one that, this will not work for, Jesus does not love. And so it's never too late. And so there's hope for each one of us.
I really like that. He's a gold mine of grace.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Beautiful.
Yeah, when I was going through my darkest times, I just thought, I learned that there is no limit to the length of the golden chain of mercy. It can reach down to the bottom.
Amen.
No matter how far down you are,
That's right.
the golden chain of mercy is able to reach you where you are.
That's right.
And we all need that hope. That's what we need. That's what this world needs. In the midst of a crisis, the coronavirus crisis or any other crisis, or the final crisis, or anything that we go through in our life, there's nothing that is too big for God to handle.
That's right.
And I think probably the greatest battle is to believe that.
Yeah.
To believe that there is a God in heaven who loves us, and who can help us, and who wants to help us,
Yeah.
and who will help us, no matter what. And it's not, we can't. It's unrealistic to think that everything will go right just because we're a Christian.
That's
Because
right.
look at Jesus. He suffered, and he agonized, and he hung on a cross, and he was in darkness too. For
He's
3
separated
hours,
from
that's
his
right.
Father.
He felt separated from his Father, and yet he trusted God anyway. And that's, we have to, the temptation is to get angry with God, to, challenge him and to question him. And like that's what Job went through,
Yeah.
those temptations. But he came out of all that It says Job did not sin with his lips, and he still trusted God. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. And we will learn on the other side that if we continue to trust him, he'll make it all up to us.
Yeah, that's very encouraging to know that. And there's hope for anyone. Depression is winnable, and that's the good news. And there's a solution. So it's not something that somebody has to struggle with for the rest of their lives, which is what a lot of pharmaceutical companies and other entities will tell you, but that's not true. So there's a way out, and there is a solution,
That's
and
right.
it can get better.
It can. So, we have just about 2 minutes left. Other than that, any final thoughts you want to share?
I just want to make an appeal that it's never too late. You're not alone. The Lord does have a hope and a future for you. Jeremiah 29:11, you can put your name in there, personalize it, and read it every day until it becomes a new way for you to think about your life. You can change the way you think if you reach out to Jesus and surrender your life over to him.
And he did it for you.
And that's right.
And he did it for me.
Right.
And he will do it. He'll do it for you.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that really helps as we look at all the things that are going on around us is to keep our eye on the other side. In Revelation 22, verse 4, it says that one of these days that God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death. Death is going to be gone. Funerals are going to be gone. Committal services, burials. There shall be no more death, neither sorrow, all the pain and sadness that we go through, nor crying, no more tears, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. And then verse 5, Revelation 21:5 says, and he that sat upon the throne said, behold, I make all things new. And he said to me, write, for these words are true and faithful. The words of the Bible are the truth. These words are true and faithful. And whatever we go through, if we choose not to trust our negative thinking or what other people may say or do, or whatever our emotions may say to us, if we choose to trust in the book, the eternal Word of God, these words are faithful and true, it'll give us hope. It'll help us to trust in a God of love, a God of mercy, a God of kindness, a God of compassion. And we'll realize that underneath us are the everlasting arms, and he will bring us through all the way to his beautiful tomorrow. God bless you.
This 3-part series, Finding Hope in Depression and Despair, is now available on DVD from White Horse Media. To order, simply call 1-800-782-4253 or order online at whitehorsemedia.com. To learn even more about how you can overcome anxiety, fear, discouragement, and depression, White Horse Media recommends these 2 easy-to-read pocketbooks, Help for the Hopeless and Secrets of Inner Peace. In Help for the Hopeless, Steve Wohlberg reveals personal details about an awful trial he passed through during the summer of 2017, how God brought him through the horror of deep darkness, and how you can find help too, whatever your struggles. In Secrets of Inner Peace, Steve explains how deep, lasting peace is only possible through discovering the love and goodness of Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, and through the power of His Word. Both of these small pocketbooks are easy to read, heartwarming, encouraging, and great for sharing with your loved ones, friends, and even with strangers. This 3-part DVD series, Finding Hope in Depression and Despair, and both of these enlightening pocketbooks are now available from White Horse Media by calling 1-800-782-4253. That's 1-800-782-4253. A fully illustrated ebook version of Secrets of Inner Peace can also be purchased immediately on the website, secretsofinnerpeace.net. That's secretsofinnerpeace.net.